Spend some time as usual. Not going to waste any time on it. Nice to be back. Nice to have any of y'all back that are here. Nice to have any of y'all that are here for the first time. Got all kinds of things we'd like to cover here, but the overarching idea is allegiance. Have you ever thought about where your allegiance really lies? Have you ever examined it? Whom do you serve? Right? Really. And in what order? Because we've all got multiple layers of allegiance, right? Without a doubt. You have a certain amount of allegiance to your, let's say, your husband, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be. You're going to do things with them in mind. Now, that may come before other people in your life, may come after, mother, kids, whatever the case may be. We all know people that, they've got one person that's in front of everything in their life. And they do pretty much everything with them in mind. As an example, I've got a son, and when I get up and run around and do things, I've got him in mind pretty much all the time, right? When I'm going to confront someone on the train doing something that they shouldn't be doing, I'm thinking to myself, do I have to go pick him up after school, or is he home waiting for me, or whatever the case may be? Essentially, I'm asking myself, do I have time to get arrested and maybe not make it home until tomorrow? Because if he's around, that's relevant. If he's not around, I'm going to give myself a little bit more wiggle room, a little bit more room to take a risk, because my decision is not about to negatively impact him if it goes sideways. Okay? My allegiance to him is demonstrated in that way. I'm thinking about him before I speak and act. I have other allegiances, of course. And depending on situations, right, one's going to take precedence over another. So allegiance can be a little bit flexible, but there are definitely certain things that should not really be flexible. We'll make an easy example of it. You should want to serve the interests of America before you serve the interests of some other nation, right? That's kind of a no-brainer, right? There was this guy, he said America first. He wasn't right about everything, but he had some things right. If you're an American. But let's ask ourselves, really, if we fancy ourselves servants of God, right? Good people, Christians, or whatever name you want to give it, but you fancy yourself as being someone who's actually trying to do spiritual work for the better here on planet Earth, what should your primary allegiance be, right? What should come before everything else? And then, are you really living that way? It's been said that man cannot serve two masters, right? It's been said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. What does that mean in a real world sense? Can you really be a servant of the Most High, but still chasing things that the world tells you ought to want, right? Still serving things that the world tells you that you ought to serve. I'll give you an easy example here. Guy joins the military. He's a soldier now. He's going to take orders without questioning them. I'm sure a lot of people, like myself, way back 21 years ago when 9/11 first happened, you were feeling pretty gung-ho about going overseas and kicking some butt. I, for one, am glad that I was not able to do that. I was in the military, but I got out, long story, but I was not able to do that. And at the time, I was a little bent out of shape. Thank God I wasn't able to do that. Because I know a lot of good people who meant well went overseas, and they ended up having to do things that were not good. Because after all, they're not the ones making the decisions, right? They believed in what they were doing because they were told certain stories, and I know their heart was in the right place, but they ended up having to do things that were not good because they're soldiers and they got to follow orders, and the people making decisions. Do I need to talk about the people making decisions for the federal government and military? So they swore their allegiance to this United States corporation, and so then they had to follow the orders of the United States corporation, which I guarantee you is often at odds with that of the Creator God. All right, definitely United States corporation not doing a whole lot of good on planet Earth. I love America. I don't give a damn about the United States corporation. Y'all know me. You know what I mean when I say that. You don't, I got some old videos you might want to watch to clear that right up for you. There's America, and then there's the United States. They're not the same thing. No joke. So, really, what are your allegiances? Who is first? Who's second, right? Go from there. It's just a thought exercise. It's really just to help you see where you're really putting your time and your energy and your center of thought. I mean, if you are regularly meditating on what you need to do for your girlfriend or boyfriend, but it's a kind of an afterthought what your son or daughter needs, might need to balance that out, right? If you are regularly thinking about things you need to do for your favorite politician, show up here, show up there, show this support, do this, hand out that flyer, whatever the case may be, right? You're helping out a man who's running for an office, right? That's fine, but don't get tripped up in the personalities, right? Cults of personality, boy, they spring up. They're like mushrooms. Just boop, you wake up in the morning and there they are. Actually, probably more like dandelions. But the point is, that can happen. It happens to all of us at one time or another. You get caught up in someone that you think is amazing. Don't forget that they're just a servant too. Don't get your allegiance all muddied up. You should have one primary allegiance if you consider yourself a servant of God. Right? One primary allegiance. Everything else comes after that. Right? You're thinking all the time. I mean, all the time. Nobody's on all the time, right? Jesus said, no one is good but God. Definitely. But you're trying as much as possible. Look, here's what we're after. Okay, here's what we're after as servants of the Most High. We are after increasing our periods of awareness. Like I was talking earlier about how I make choices with my son in mind. We need to increase our periods of self-awareness and awareness of God and our connection so that we are more often in a state of full consciousness, acting on behalf of God. You're never going to be on all the time. That would be perfection. It's not going to happen, right? You're going to get caught up in the moment and be like, that guy's ripping me off, and say something nasty, and you regret it later, hopefully, right? Do better next time. But you want to try to expand those periods of awareness where you are speaking and acting on behalf of your Creator. That's why you're here. So that's really what we're after. I want to show you something fun here. This is the mandate of heaven, as the Chinese call it. And look, I'll keep it up for a little bit so you can really take a look at it, or actually you can just pause it, right? But you get the idea here. This is a cycle, and so the Chinese model of looking at things was like the mandate to rule comes from heaven, and I think I agree, generally speaking, right? I mean, this is kind of where your connection to what do we got there? Romans. I think it's Romans 13 where it talks about obeying the government and all of that stuff. We're talking about a government that's actually got the backing of heaven, if you will, right? The mandate of heaven. Governments and the people within government actually obeying God's commandments and trying to do good, and trying to be faithful and honorable in the execution of their duties. Romans 13 is not talking about obeying corrupt authorities who have lied, cheated, and steal to get into where they're into. It's not the same thing. And so this mandate of heaven essentially addresses that, right? If you follow the cycle, it's like everything's working fine for a while, and then the government gets corrupted, and then, of course, things kick in. And I know you could say these are punishments from God, right? Famine and natural disasters. You could just say that it's inevitable those things are going to happen, but when the government is corrupt, the government's going to fail to respond to those things that happen naturally very well. So then, of course, commoners are going to get tired and they're going to start revolting and so on and so forth. And then the dynasty is considered to have lost the mandate of heaven. In other words, you no longer have to support this worldly government because it's wholly corrupted. It is not of God. It is not mandated by heaven at this point, right? So the current emperor or government is defeated and a new one takes place. And then, of course, this new dynasty is born and changes come and everything runs smoother and people are pretty happy in general. And so, the cycle goes around, right? That's sort of the Chinese model. Makes a lot of sense to me. This is something that I found actually called the Tytler cycle, which is basically the same, but I like it because it has a little bit more sort of spiritual insight woven into it, right? You look at this. I'll leave this one up for you so you can really look at it. You get down to liberty, right? And it's interesting because first, when you have sufficiency in liberty and all of that, things are good. But then, of course, it gets to be excess. What's an excessive liberty? Well, the liberty to deny that there's a creator. The liberty to abuse the grace that God gives us to sin, meaning like the creator knows we're going to make mistakes. That's kind of built into the system and it's okay. But you can abuse that, right? Liberty to control myself. That's badly worded, meaning like liberty to not control myself. Like I'm free to just be wanton from time to time. Not so much, really. Self-control is kind of important. Liberty to divide the body of Christ. Absolutely. Liberty to just talk all kinds of craziness and invent. There's certain things, I can't say on YouTube still. It's a censorship location. Invent things that only confuse people's roles in society and confuse children. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Liberty to divide and invent a bunch of BS. So anyway, so the cycle goes on. But again, I like this because it has a bit of spiritual knowledge woven into it. So take a good look at that and tell me if you don't think that there's some truth to that. I certainly do. So look, so these are the things that go on. This is a cycle that plays out, right? It's played out before, it'll play out again. We need to not get caught up in any of those little short-term manifestations of order that we call civilization and government. Okay, we need to keep American ideals, right? Like all of that Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence stuff. We need to keep that stuff alive, or we will be back thousands of years in terms of civilizational organization. The full frontal assault on America it's about more than America. It's about the future. Listen, fellas, you got to be able to think multi-generationally if you're going to be able to understand some of the things that the crazies are doing. All of this bit with the open borders, like how important is that? Y'all don't really think that this is about immediate voting, do you? That's a perk, right? That's a cherry on top of the cake, right? Like, ooh, people that we can get to vote the way we want because we got them by the short hairs because we let them come over illegally and we're giving them handouts, right? Cherry on top. The naked dwarf that's going to bust out of the cake in 20 years is all the kids that they're about to have, okay? In 20 years, they'll all be able to vote, if we still have voting, and there will be so many of them. So, ticking time bomb, folks, ticking time bomb. You need to do your best to educate young people in civics and the greatness of American thought. Right? Why America, especially, even though it's imperfect, and how bright our future can be if we can just stick to our founding principles. We need to educate them, or they're just going to be a bunch of Coca-Cola drinking, Democrat voting. What can I say? Like they'll be lost. They'll be lost. It's like the powers that be want to turn the clock back by inviting a bunch of people from that we'll call it more primitive societies. Right, where they haven't been cruising the internet looking for information for the past 15 years because they haven't had the internet for 15 years, right? Right? Feed them crickets. I mean, these people won't know because of where they're coming from. 20 years, we've got a ticking time bomb, population time bomb. That's a big part of that whole operation. But I digress. So watch out for that. Don't let ignorance just fester. Right? Do your best to counteract it with love where you can. Because these people are here and their kids are part of the future. We need them to be Americans. You understand? They're not a problem when they become Americans, right? The problem is people coming here without a whiff of America to them. But again, more importantly than any specific country or any allegiance to any specific country is that you recognize that you already have an allegiance, and it's to the greatest nation in the cosmos, if you will. You might call that the family of the Christ, if you will. Okay? In fact, in Revelations 18:4 talks about come out of her. That's an interesting thought. Let's just read that real quick. I rock the New King James Version most often. Right? 18:4, Revelations. I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Talking about Babylon. This, of course, being in Revelations, is not literally talking about the historical Babylon. Many people think of America as the Babylon that's being mentioned here. It's not for me to say, but whether we're being specific and talking about America or whether we're being a little bit more general, we're definitely talking about that world-dominating commercial society that ends up crumbling because, I mean, look, what kind of system is that? Materialism and greed and profit over all else. We make the rules and you live by them. I mean, look, y'all know what the United States corporation has been doing, right? Babylon for real. Come out of her. What does that mean? Does that mean we all got to move? That wouldn't be reasonable. It means come out of her, or in a way, it means get her out of you, right? I happen to live upon the land that is known as New York City, but I'm not a New Yorker because I'm out of her, or she's out of me. There was a time when I was kind of enamored with New York, having a great time. Like I said before, it's like Pleasure Island. You have a great time, but you become a donkey. So I did that for a while, and it came out of her. Switching my allegiance on paper is something that I've done relatively recently, and I definitely encourage anybody who has any idea the things that I'm talking about to do just that. I've mentioned them before. Hisadvocates.com. They got a plan for all of that. I mean, I was going down that path on my own, but I was going sort of the slow hack your own bushes way. And in Kelby and Company were like, look, we cut a path right over here. So I was like, perfect, let me walk on that path because it's like running right next to mine. All right, good stuff. Anyway, you want to come out of her, you really do, because paying into that system, you're not accomplishing anything good. You're paying for more missiles to hit people in other countries, right? The taxes, the income tax. I mean, ridiculous. I could go on, but you want to be as outside of that as you can be. And you actively want to be serving your Creator by serving your fellow man, right? Treating others the way you would want to be treated. Like I said earlier, increasing your periods of awareness so that you can act on behalf of God more frequently, more consciously, more effectively. Because let's face it, it is a grievous sin to carry the name of the Lord thy God in vain. What are we talking about, right? Well, many people would think that that's one of the 10 commandments, and they would say, no. It says, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. And I would ask, well, what does that mean? And most people would say, well, don't exclaim Jesus Christ or whatever, right? I mean, don't speak the name of the Lord in vain. Would it make sense for the Creator of the universe to be so sensitive that the Creator says, I cannot have anyone speaking my name like as an exclamation. Can't have that. In fact, that's worse than murder. We're gonna put that prior to murder on the list of things that you shouldn't do. I don't actually think that makes sense. So what could that possibly mean? Well, in looking at the word take a little more closely and looking at the Hebrew word that was translated as take, what we find is that the Hebrew could have been translated as carry, right? Because if I take this cup and I go downstairs, I'm going to be carrying it with me, right? Okay. So what would that mean? Do not carry the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Well, now that's a little different, isn't it? That's different than just speaking it in an exclamation, which I'm not going to dispute. Probably shouldn't get in the habit of doing that. I mean, it's just bad, it's sloppy speech, right? Not that I've never done it, but it's not going to condemn you to hell. It's not worse than murder, but you shouldn't do it. So what does it mean then if it's not speaking it? I believe, and I'm not alone in this, that it means do not carry the name of the Lord thy God with you falsely, in vain. Don't walk around saying you're a good man or a Christian or a servant of God or whatever, wearing the vestments maybe, carrying the Lord with you in vain. Outwardly carrying it, but inwardly not. That leads people astray, sets a bad example, gives a bad name to the people who really are carrying the Lord with them, not in vain. And that, I think if you think about it, let's see, deceiving people, setting a bad example, giving a bad name to those people who really do serve God. Essentially giving God a bad name because you're supposed to be his or her representative. Yeah, you could say that that's worse than murder because you're going to cause untold spiritual damage, let alone the death of one physical form. Now we've got something, don't we? Something to consider, okay? Something to consider. You don't want to be one of those people, okay? Talking the talk but not walking the walk. That's worse than murder. Yup, I believe that that's what was being spoken to when the Ten Commandments were handed down. Give it some thought. See what you think. Test your own heart. Talk to God in your own time. But really, speaking the name of the Lord thy God in vain, worse than murder? Giving a bad name by carrying it falsely. So let's throw down on a little current event here real quick, just because I just finished reading a book that deals with it, okay? I have been plowing through this fun book, Putin Country, all right? And if you check out this author, you will find that she is an NPR correspondent, okay? She's a left-winger, okay? Whether you like that, good or bad, whatever, she's a left-winger. I mean, that you read this and it comes through quite clear, okay? This book came out in 2017, all right? What I love about this, among many things, she's not even pretending that things aren't what they are when it comes to the United States and Ukraine. But of course, nowadays, I mean, we'll see if I get censored for saying this. Okay, listen, fellas, YouTubers, YouTube censors, I'm reading a book written by one of your people, okay, Ann Garrels, right? She's probably on your whitelist somewhere. Okay, these are her words, not my words. These are her words back in 2016-17. Tamara regularly talks to friends in eastern Ukraine, and she fully subscribes to the official narrative that the separatists are rescuing Russians and Russian speakers from the depredations of Ukrainian fascists and Western intrigue. She points out that the Ukrainian government has cut off some of the country's eastern regions from subsidies and pensions. Tamara dismisses any facts that contradict her views as lies from the West. Unfortunately, she's not altogether wrong. Though not nearly as outrageous as Russian propaganda, Western reporting on Ukraine has been shabby. The Western media have portrayed what happened in Ukraine as a popular democratic revolt against dictatorship, but it can also be understood as the unconstitutional overthrow of an elected, if frequently thuggish, government. So, you read things like that written by NPR correspondents a few years ago before the censorship engine really kicked in. And it sort of sheds a little bit of light on what's going on now. I mean, the woman just admitted what happened several years ago in Ukraine. She admitted it. And nowadays we act like that's fiction, right? I'm really curious to see if I get cut down for even saying that. We'll see. I probably don't have enough of a viewership for that. So here's to small miracles, right? But it's outrageous. I mean, anyone who has any memory knows what was going on. But we're expected to forget all of that and just, fly the blue and yellow flag and, just more billions going over there, okay? So I mentioned that for the people who mean well, but are still confused about where their real enemies are. I'm going to just say it like this. Your enemy is not in Russia. Okay? We'll leave it at that. Now, I'm so sorry for the people that actually went and got this here book and read it. I was supposed to try to schedule some type of lives we could discuss. I'll be honest with you. So scheduling for me between that and trying to get other people, it's never going to happen. At least not anytime soon. So I'm really sorry for that. But here's what I want to do is I want to just kind of address it briefly. So we could spend a lot of time talking about this, and that's why it would have been fun to do a live, right? But let's just address some of these things. I'll point out some things that I thought were really valuable. And again, maybe some of you guys that have read it will talk. I promise to get back to you. We'll have a little dialogue in the comments if you have things that you want to share or point out or whatever. One thing that really jumped out at me in this book, and I hope you guys noticed it too, those of you that read it, was what I call the demonic trinity on page 58. It says, this is titled The Doctrine of the Democrats, right? Yes, there were Democrats back then too. The strange phenomenon of our times, one which will probably astound our descendants, is the doctrine based on this triple hypothesis. The total inertness of mankind, right? Like mankind can't get anything done without being led. The omnipotence of the law. If it's written down and it's a law, then it should go, and that's all there is to it. And the infallibility of the legislator. These men, unlike other flawed men that need to be ruled, are capable of writing down laws that should be followed by all men. Okay, I call that the demonic trinity. These three ideas form the sacred symbol of those who proclaim themselves totally democratic. So far as they are democratic, they place unlimited faith in mankind. So far as they are social, they regard mankind as little better than mud. Very interesting. We could go on with that. Not going to, because you guys really ought to just read this for yourself. The Superman idea. These people think that they are super. If the natural tendencies of mankind are so bad that it's not safe to permit people to be free, how is it that the tendencies of these organizers are always good? Do not the legislators and their appointed agents also belong to the human race? Now there's a question worth answering and asking. Obviously he doesn't address that here, but it's something worth thinking about on many, many different levels. Or do they believe that they themselves are made of a finer clay than the rest of mankind? The organizers maintain that society, when left undirected, rushes headlong to inevitable destruction because of the instincts of the people are so perverse. Yet the legislators claim to be able to stop this suicidal course and give it a saner direction. The gems in this book, look, it's a treasure chest. It's a treasure chest. The socialists despise mankind, right? And he goes on to talk about that idea. The socialists wish to play God. Just excellent stuff. And look, the gist of it all is that you have rights given to you by God. We haven't really been allowing people to live that way, although America was doing a reasonably good job by global standards at that time, with the exception of slavery. He says that in here, right? I mean, he knew that there was work to be done. But what we need to do is we need to focus on getting back to that original freedom of basically living by God's law. So I don't want to make a long video even longer. I'm going to wrap it here with just a couple of words about 9/11. The truth cannot be destroyed. I forget who said it, but it has never a truer statement has been spoken. The truth is like the sun. You can cover it up for a while, but it ain't going anywhere. Okay? So, just chill. Focus on what you got to do for you and yours. Anybody, really firmly caught up in, this controversy or that controversy, just remember that your purpose, is not to single-handedly enlighten everybody about like one thing that happened, right? You're here to do a lot of different things for different people, and some people may need to learn about this, and some people may need to learn about that. So, it's been said that you'll be fishers of men, right? To try to go out there and get people to return to spiritual living. You're going to need lots of different lures, bait, what have you, tools, nets and poles and so on and so forth. Maybe a fishing spear. You're going to need different tools. Oh my God, before I forget, I just got to show you all these photos. just because. Look at this insane nonsense I find in the New York Public Library. This is on sale in the New York Public Library. How did this... y'all know how this happened. But yeah, the corruption runs real deep, huh? This Satanist has got her little initiatory ritual books sitting right there at the NYPL. Babylon indeed. In any event, we have much to be joyous for, because when it comes to the whole Rona thing, hey, boy, did that sort of turn a corner, huh? Here in New York, it's really remarkable how things have changed. So hurrah for that, and for those of us that resisted, hurrah. All right, let's enjoy this victory, because there's more battles coming, but we got that one, huh? God bless y'all. God keep y'all. Keep doing the good work.